with the new stuff that's kind of come out of Xamarin, it's kind of obsoleted some of the stuff we've been using in the past. So Dan and I kind of got together and decided, let's make a new template for our Xamarin projects. And there's still some things that kind of weren't put together as well as we'd hoped. So we kind of added a few little bits and things here, but what we came up with was a pretty clean architecture. So Dan's going to go through kind of the template that he's created and how it works, and hopefully it's going to be helpful for especially those of you who are doing Xamarin and especially starting a new project with this new template. So with that introduction, take it away, Dan.
Yay. All right, so a couple of things on my desktop I'm trying to get organized real quick. There are two different pieces to the way the template is structured. One of them is going to be the actual template itself, and the other is going to be the libraries the template depends on. So I'm going to go over the template first, and then I'll go over the libraries, since you won't really have to do anything with the libraries other than use them, but it'll be nice to know how they work. So it's like that's the one I want. All right, I don't know. Can you guys see?
Looks good to me.
Okay. And you just see this one with the user details view model?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so the template works differently from how it did with Caliburn. You still have a lot of the same setup, but it's being used differently. So inside the main piece of the template itself, you've got your typical stuff, you've got your pages, you've got your app.xaml.cs. It's going to have all your wire up and startup stuff inside there. Pages, same kind of stuff we're used to. We're going to have our different pages with our views and view models. So nothing really new there, although there will be new ways of using them. I did make this change toward the end of the Caliburn templates life cycle, so it shouldn't be too bad. But if we look at the, well, so notice one thing, we only have a main activity, and then in iOS we only have, well, we have app delegate and main. But we don't really do much with main. It's just app delegate views. So we only care about app delegate and main activity for the two platform projects. They're both going to do similar stuff, which is to say they're going to take all your initialization things like we're used to doing, and then we're going to create a new instance of our shared project app. We're going to get a new instance of service collection. We're going to pass that collection to the configure services method of our app. We're then going to build our service provider, hand that off to the start function, and then load application. So this is the same as it was in the last lifecycle of Caliburn app. But if you've not used that before, this is just one of the ways we get sort of everything wired together. So that gives us our service collection with our provider. That hands the provider back to the application, but still gives the platform application its chances to wire up whatever it needs to if there are platform-specific pieces it needs to pass in.
For the platform-specific services, is the idea to put those in here, or is the idea to, in the configure services, do a thing where it says if platform is iOS, then register this service, otherwise register this service?
No, the shared project has no knowledge of the platform project. So there's no way for this file right here to access anything that's in either of the platform projects. It just, there's no reference there. So
okay, so it still has to happen there.
Yeah, as it should be. The shared project shouldn't know anything about an Android specific thing except for when it's something that's built into the Xamarin framework. We don't want to pass knowledge about which platform we're on if we can avoid it. So yeah, just inside here, you can either do it before you call configure services or after. It shouldn't really matter. And then if you need the provider for something inside here, you've got access to that as well. I did notice, so I was just doing the Rock Exotica pull request, and Justin is using a library. I think it's like Connect Peripheral something or other. There's a Bluetooth library. Anyway, I was curious about it for my own projects, so I went and looked at it, and they're actually deprecating that library, and they're using a new one that they're kind of combining things in called Shiny. And Shiny apparently requires you to inherit here from their application class in order to use a lot of the stuff. And it gives you things like background services and scheduled tasks and things like that really easily. So it's a nice platform. Probably start using it at some point. But if you remember the Caliburn application, Caliburn also required you to inherit from their application. So if we wanted to use both of those, there would be no way, because you can't have the app inherit from two different things. So one of the things I tried to do with this platform is, so this framework, is make it so that it's independent of the actual application itself, so that we can throw it into whatever application you want. It should just work. So inside this configure services method, we're going to wire everything up. And we do have our normal stuff. So we have our add logging, which gives us both console and debug. In the past, we've done a lot of the system.diagnostics.debug stuff, and I want to see that go away, mostly because it provides a number of things that we don't actually want. So by just doing this, then we get our debug stuff built in, but we could do things like add console or log to a file or log to an API or anything else we want to log to, all with the one log call. We can just wire it up all right here. Anyway, back to the framework. These are the only real pieces you need to worry about. And there are two different versions of these. So I've provided this version and then the other version in comments. And then down here as well, you've got this version and then that version. So with the new Xamarin stuff, we have two ways of navigating our application. One is going to be through this shell, and that's going to have a whole different type of navigation. It still has the classic navigation we've been using, but it also has a bunch of other different navigation types, which is why we have things like these routes on them, and why I can register routes down here as well. So if we want to use shell, shell will give us things like the tab bar if we want that. So if you've ever used any of our previous applications, like DAVC is one that comes to mind, where we had to build the tab bar. It works, but it's a lot of extra work that we have to do, whereas shell now just gives it to you. It also has this flyout stuff that you can use, and that's going to be where you just hit the hamburger menu, or you swipe from the left or whatever else, and it brings up that sidebar menu. So it's got that stuff built in as well as things like the header, where if we need to put special things in there, where you've got the back button currently on our applications, but if you wanted to have the back button plus a custom name and maybe even custom buttons, then we had to do that a little bit more difficultly. But this one makes that a lot easier. So shell does simplify a lot of things, but it's not right for every application. So if we want to use shell, the two pieces that we need, we're going to need a binder and we're going to need a navigator. And there are two types of navigators, a navigator and a route navigator. This route navigator gives you navigation by string navigation, which is what shell does. That's why we have these strings down here. But if you want to use just the typical navigation stuff, you can use just iNavigator. And you can see in this case, iNavigator is being fulfilled by route navigator, because route navigator inherits from navigator, so they can be both. But shell navigator is going to give us navigation aspects that come from the shell, and it's essentially just a simple wrapper in that context, where the methods that you would use for shell are replicated from the shell navigator. But you'll see that we need to give it an instance of our shell and then an instance of this iBinder. And this iBinder is the thing that binds together our views and view models. So before Caliburn was doing that for us, now we've got this piece that does it for us. And what that gives us is, if we look at one of our pages, so I'll just do the About page, you'll notice that nothing in here has any knowledge about what view model it goes with. In typical Xamarin stuff, what you would have is something down here where you're going to say content page, really kind of hope to pop up, dot binding context. And then inside here, you would have to actually create an instance of your view model. That's obviously not what we want because the view model might have dependencies that the view has no idea how to fulfill. We don't want the view to know specifically which view model it is that it's binding to, because we have had applications where multiple views can bind to multiple view models. So it's not an ideal situation. So what this binder here does is sort of automatically wrap those together for us. So to make that work, this thing requires two functions. You can also add in fact, I'm going to change this real quick. Rather than the two functions, you can just give it the provider. So both of these will work just fine. If you just give it the provider, it's basically going to just do this stuff for you, but it's a little bit cleaner. This one, the point of the functions is that you need to be able to have this thing get a service and get services. And that's so that it can pull out the view models from the collection. It's also so that it can help give dependencies to those view models. So both of these will work just fine. Clean this up a little bit more. There, much better. So these two are going to work in concert with each other to make all this stuff happen. Once you've got this wired up, I'll leave it for another presentation to go over how Xamarin's shell works. But you can then navigate in a number of different ways. So down here, I've registered this string route. I've also, inside this shell itself, got some templates or some tabs based on routes. And so when I want to navigate, I can use those routes to do so. So I'm going to come in here to my demo items view model. And you can see I can just ask for a route navigator and a user service just like we're used to. I've got these commands so that when they select a user, I can run these commands. On activate, I can call get users sync or async, which I guess is part of the framework. So because we're not using any of the Caliburn stuff, we don't inherit anymore from the screen class. This view model is something that exists inside this project. So it's nothing that the framework is providing. I've just created it to make things with the iProperty or identify property change a little easier. It also has this type, which, sorry, Nate, I did it my style instead of my Fire style, so I'll have to fix that. There we go. Now it can pass code reviews. Anyway, so this belongs to this particular project, not something that the framework is doing. So it gives us a lot of flexibility in how we want to use the framework because we're not dependent on anything other than just these classes. It does, however, provide you with a couple of interfaces. So this iActivate and there's also an iDeactivate interface. Those are going to give you this method so that when you need to do something like call get users when this page activates, you can do that. Those will just fire off once the page has been fully activated. So you should have access to all the regular binding. So once you've got our users, once they select a user here.
Something real quick. Please don't do things like AJAX calls and stuff on a constructor. It's not only bad practice, but it causes problems with Xamarin. It's very difficult to debug.
Yeah, you should never be doing anything that's a wait inside of a constructor in general. So that would include anything from API calls to retrieve something from storage, anything. If it's a wait, don't do it in the constructor.
Anything that's work should not happen in a constructor.
Also a good point. Yeah, the constructor is just for building the object. So I've got this command here, and this command will get fired off when you select a user. So if we look at our XAML, I've just got this collection view, which is binding to our collection of users. And then inside the template for each one, it's just a stack layout that has the name, their location information, and then you can see if they tap on the stack layout, They actually have to double tap. I don't know if this has always been here, but this number of taps required thing, super handy if you want to do things like double taps or even tap and hold, because you can even tap and hold things on here as well. Very, very handy. Anyway, double tap it. It'll, as a parameter, pass in the current user object. And then the command is going to be that select user command. So that's going to be this. And you can see it's going to just fire off using this navigator and say navigate to user details. The nice thing about this is you don't have to know anything about what the page is. You don't have to know about how to create it, nothing. This just fires this off. And Justin, I know at one point you had asked how you could dependency inject a view, and there wasn't really a way at the time. This gives you that option. So because we're using routing that was configured here, this is still just type of user details view, right? But if I wanted to, I could set this to, rather than using the string view, if I told it this would need to be of type demo items details, I think I called it. Anyway, whatever the name of the page is, and then just not use the route. Okay, hopefully this is a very, very, very rare use case, but it would support this so long as you add these views to your service collection. Okay, so it would actually know how to go out and get this thing. If they're not part of the service collection, it's going to use the typical Xamarin creation mechanisms to create the view and wire everything up for you. But if it's in your service collection, then you could actually get services added into it. So, and that's going to pass this to the user. So another piece too is if we need to pass data, this navigate to that second parameter is a data object. So if I look at the user details view model, here's my data or my user parameter that I want to be fulfilled. And this navigation parameter is optional. If there's nothing in here that has this navigation parameter on here, and you can only have one, then it will just find the first thing it can find that has the right data type and fulfill it. But so like right here, since I've only got one user, this would work just fine, and this would get the data we need inside of it. But if you have multiple users, you can use this attribute to specify, I want this one to be the one that gets filled with the data. And then, of course, we can come down here and use binding or whatever else we need to do with it to make things work. And so our pages should just kind of flow together. So again, most of this stuff is going to be fairly simplistic, fairly non-opinionated. We don't have to make references to anything framework related inside of our views. So before you could use Calibre and Micro to do some of the magic up of binding methods to actions. Now we're just going to use the plain Xamarin command pattern to do that. If we need data, we've got the command parameters. And then with that, we should have everything we need. So there isn't currently a way of getting access to the view, but we shouldn't ever need that. And Justin asked for it earlier. There isn't really a way for me to even provide that information with the way with how unopinionated this is. If it becomes something we need, I can look into getting it, but for now, it is what it is. So again, this is just a very simple template, so there isn't really a lot of functionality to it, but it should be a good starting point to get things going. So you can see we've got the user services, things that we should expect to see pulled in. Everything else should be pretty straightforward as far as what we've done with Xamarin and how we don't use Xamarin. So just to give you an idea, here's this about page, which just has the about stuff in it. This stuff down here, the tabs view, this is all coming from the shell. So I haven't created any of this. This is just right here. There's a tab bar, title, icon, and then telling you which page to display. And even though all I've done is tell it that I want this to be the demo items view, if I come in here and look at my users, you can see it doesn't look pretty, but all of my users are listed. So everything gets data bound correctly. Everything is ready to go. We even get the nice material at the top of the page, little display thing, which is nice and responsive to your touch. So works really, really well. And then if I tap on one of these, maybe
Double tap.
oh, double tap. There we go. Then you can see welcome user number 1. Okay, and if I look at the stuff in here, you can see with binding is to the username. So it'll say welcome username exclamation point, which you can see. So our data got fulfilled, all of our binding works. And then our command, which I just added for this, so hopefully it works. Just this piece here, it should navigate to the about page. Yeah, that's Algebraic. So the routing for the shell, depending on how you register it, is done differently. So this is actually a relative route, so I'm gonna have to put these 2 slashes in here. But again, this is all stuff for the Xamarin shell, which for whatever project you are working on, if you're using shell, you guys can research that, or we can have another presentation on it later. Tap, page, and we're back to the about page. And you can see these even are responsive as well with how they work. This also works by design. So because so this is treated as sort of a suite of pages. So as long as I'm inside the details page, it's going to use the details page as the page here. So which is handy. But anyway, good stuff just from the shell. But the main point is if you're going to be using this. So the other navigation page style is if you're doing not shell, which is what Justin's using with Rock Exotica, which is this classic navigator. With classic navigator, you can't just assign the main page to whatever shell. You actually have to assign it to a navigation page and then wrap your main view inside that. Those are Xamarin's rules. But that will work roughly the same. So inside here, rather than navigating by string here, that's when I would need to use the generic version that I showed earlier, where I'm navigating to the actual view. And that's going to navigate just like it would have done with the old template, or just like Xamarin would do if we worked with this framework. So to more easily demonstrate that, I'm going to switch over here to this. So this is the project that I'm using to build up the libraries. So it's got its own sort of demo app built into it, but it helps me to sort of test things. These are the classes that are going to be running. So here's the classic one. Here's the shell one. So if you ever need to inherit from something, you can make your own versions of things that should work just fine. Inside this version, though, you can see that I've got a few different routes registered. Again, here I'm just wiring up things the same. There's this mock data stored. That actually came with the original Xamarin template, so it's not something we're using, but it's there. Still using the shell. So most of this stuff is going to be the same. The differences are inside some of the view models. So not this one. And not this one. That's the one. We've got a couple of different ways of doing navigation. So you can see the first way here is using the classic style of navigation. So rather than routing to a route, I'm routing to a page, and I'm even passing in data. So if you're not using the shell, this is the way you're going to be doing it. where you tell it this is the page I want to go to. Optionally, here's data, and there's that. I can also navigate to modals. So before we were using that user dialogues library, we don't need to anymore. We still can if we want. But this will handle modals for us, and that can be any page we want it to be, so we can make our own modals really easily. Pass in data however we want. We can also use this just to show you some of the API. So we've got this display action sheet. Okay, if you've ever looked at action sheets, one example is if you've ever shared something, you say I want to share, it pops up the little slider on Android anyway, where it has a bunch of different options for things you can share. Okay, that's an example of an action sheet, so we can use those. I can display alerts, which are going to be native alerts. I can display prompts, so I can have them type in some text value and get the response back. Here's my go back feature, so I can just go back a page. I can navigate to different pages, either via string routes or via the classes themselves up here. Modal, I can navigate to root. So if I'm on some page that's 6 pages deep and I want to go all the way back to the main page, I can probably navigate to root and it'll pop all of those off the stack. And then that's actually it for this stuff. So that should be every use
interrupt
case.
for a moment and say how cool that is.
Yeah, it should be every use case. Sorry, Justin, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say he may not interrupt, but I do have a question. So the action sheet, does it allow export type stuff as well?
What do you mean?
Like if I want to save data off to OneDrive or email it or text it or whatever? I need to build an export functionality in Rock Exotica, and if that supports it, it'd be great.
No, this is just an action sheet. It's not like you still need to build the functionality that this thing does once they've selected something.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it's just an action sheet. So if you want to call into something that's like the native like the share feature is my example.
Yeah.
Then that's like you can use Xamarin Essentials to do that. It's not part of the navigation framework. This is just an example. Like if I had 7 different things I needed them to select from, then I can pass in, my 7 different options to the action sheet, and it'll give them a page with 7 different buttons they can pick. They pick the one they want, and this thing will return whichever one they picked, and go from there. So no, it doesn't provide any sort of functionality other than just displaying. Anyway, so this second thing is the same thing except for it's a modal, and you can see I'm using the exact same page for both, right? So I can actually make literally any page that I want a view and make that either a full page or a modal, either one, any page I want. And then this other one down here, this is using the string route, and I'm even using routed data, so I can handle data there as well. So if we look at this, and I'm going to need to disable all my breakpoints, which I can't do from here. Breakpoints. So yeah, both the navigation forms are here. This demo app, I haven't done anything to make it useful for creating an actual project. So it's got a lot of the same, like the original stuff that Xamarin just kind of gives you from their template in it, which isn't what we want. So actually, I'll show you an example. It kind of shows the stuff we want to avoid. That's the thing. Oh, it's in here. So if I look in here, these views come from the Xamarin template, the default Xamarin template. And actually, I guess it's in the code behind it. Yeah, there we go. So they're just setting the binding context equal to a view model, which means that this particular page has to create its own view model. which means it doesn't know about stuff to reject, and it's, yeah, not exactly great. So if we look here, this items page is actually this stuff here. Same with the about page, it's just the default Xamarin stuff. So I've just added in this demo section. It's just to show the demo page works. But you can see up here, this top piece. So we have our tabs down at the bottom. The about page we're used to, right? We get a title that displays stuff. Sometimes we have to build this piece ourselves. But if we look at the browse, notice they've got this add. Okay, so you can see right here, toolbar items. Here's a toolbar item, text is add. When it's clicked, it's going to fire this off. We wouldn't use click, we would use a command like that. But I can add my own things all from this navigation menu. So this used to cause us a little bit of headache to build. Now it's built into the shell. Likewise, I don't have anything in here, so it's kind of useless, but notice that we get that slide out. It's all just built into the shell. So very, very nice. Look at the demo, just to show the navigation. So when I click on the next page, it's going to use the navigate to, which will actually create a whole new page. So you can see this is a whole new page. It keeps the tabs just like we were talking about before, where the default view for this is going to be that page. Okay, but if I want the modal, then it's an actual modal dialog. Can't see anything behind it. I lose the tab bar. Give me my information. The only way to get back is either to build a button in or I can back button here. And then this routing page, you can see, is going to be using the shell routes, okay, the normal routes. And that's going to take me to here, which again is still a sub page. So it still keeps that same information, but just a different way of navigating to it. So I'm actually going to do this real fast. Change this to be
You need a title and a message. Yeah, you got it.
I thought I had a default value for the cancel button. Guess not.
Bug number 1.
Not a bug. Again, I mapped these to be simple wrappers around the actual navigation pieces, so they must not have defaults either. But if that is a request that you guys want added in, pretty simple to add in.
While it's building, do you want to talk about the symbols?
Yeah, so these 3 pieces here are the actual demo application. These 4 pieces here are the libraries that they're running on. So this is the one that contains the iBinder interface, which the navigator used. This is the iActivate interface, deactivate, navigator, route navigator. So, and then the navigation parameter attribute. So most of these are going to be just basic things. The implementations are inside here, but yeah, I guess that makes sense to have it here. These are going to be built in as NuGet libraries, NuGet packages, which means if we ever need to debug something, because Justin is the first one to use this classic navigator, and there were a number of things I just hadn't considered, so we had to fix those. To debug them, there wasn't really a way for him to do that, and so I had to basically just launch the Rock Exotica project and pull in these libraries directly so I could debug them directly. I've now got them built to use. All right, you're not the one who asked. Look, these new properties for the symbols stuff. So it's going to publish the symbols NuGet package along with the NuGet package itself. And then I've included the repository URL for the source code. So what that means is if we enable this inside Visual Studio, so you have to actually go into your options here and enable it. But once you've done that, if you are working on a project and bugs start showing up, you can actually tell it to debug through this code. So you could actually step into the navigator code and see what's going on, just as if you had the code locally. So it should make things a little bit nicer. So yeah, you can see this routing page here. I just changed it to be the alert stuff. So there's that. You can see this is a prompt just like we would normally get, and it's a native prompt, right? We don't have to do anything. I haven't changed any of the colors, so you get that weird pink. I'm not sure why that's their default color. Name. Okay. So I can customize things however I want.
Is there an override to allow for a keyboard input disposition? E.g., if you're asking for an email address, can we say, by the way, set up the keyboard for email address?
On the prompt, I believe so. So, yeah, keyboard. Yeah. So you've also got options to set the accept text, the cancel text, a placeholder. So I could do that string. And then even initial value if I wanted to. So yeah, the prompt is pretty flexible. I do wish it didn't take so long to build and deploy though.
While you're doing that, by the way, I didn't pay attention, but when you rebuild so that you could run that, do you do the entire solution or do you just do your shared project?
I'm just saying run. I'm not even rebuilding.
Okay. I've noticed that a lot of times if I don't do a rebuild, I don't get some of the code behind that I just updated. But
yeah,
previously I've made it a practice to rebuild the entire solution, and that seems to take, minutes, like 10 sometimes. But I've noticed recently if I just rebuild my shared project, that it only takes seconds and it does the same thing. So that's helped me quite a bit recently.
So this version here, 470.968, yeah, I'd have to rebuild any project that I changed. I'd have to rebuild. So if that was one of the library projects up here, I'd have to rebuild that, then rebuild the shared, then rebuild whatever else, and then it would finally work. But since I updated it to the 1080 version, I haven't had to do that. So I'm hoping it was just something they were doing in their compile steps or whatever they're doing.
That's good to hear.
Another question is, if we go and change the XAML on some of these pages, does it live update like it's supposed to?
Yeah. Hang on. So anyway, there's your email stuff, Nate. Let's see.
What about the
So
demo page?
Here, second page view. Right, I've just got the message in the title. So if I do next page, message, title, right?
Okay.
Oh, currently mine's stopped.
Oh,
Yeah, I don't know why mine's detached from the debugger, but yeah, it's worked just fine every time I've played with it.
yay.
So it's been very handy. Okay, any other questions? Things you want to look at?
When will this be available that we can take a look at it and experiment with it on our own, just so that we're, feel comfortable when we go to do a project?
I'm not planning on making the source code directly for these libraries available just yet, just because it is so fragile, because it's new. But the Xamarin template has been available, what, Justin, for a week?
Yeah, just as long as they have rights to it, just give everybody rights.
Yeah, where would we pick it up?
Just in Mindfire Git.
Okay.
So if you just log into there, you should see it as one of your
Yeah,
projects.
as far as I'm concerned, the template would be great.
Yeah, so the template, it's been ready to go. I mean, again, Justin's been helping me find things that need adjusting, but otherwise it's been up there for the project repository's been up there for at least a couple of weeks, but it's only really been in a stable form for about a week.
Is it under mindfire.xamarin.template.git?
Hang on.
I think it's MF Xamarin Template.
Yeah. Not everyone has access to it yet. I haven't
Okay.
wanted to go through and give everyone access because.
Yeah.
I gave you access though, Carrie.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Hey, Nate, what are the odds we can go through and clean out some of these users?
Another discussion, but we can do that. Another thing I would want to mention is we're going to add to this as we go. So for example, Justin and I were just kind of having a side discussion. He had an issue trying to get SQLite working. It was like, that seems like something that almost all of our apps use. Maybe we should put SQLite in our template. We want to obviously make sure we're not putting so much in our template that we spend more time culling old stuff out. But there's a few things that are kind of very helpful. There's some Xamarin Essentials things that are helpful. There's an update check dialog that I think should be part of every app that we do, where it actually goes to the App Store and it says, hey, we can see on the App Store that this version is released. You're running this version, you don't update, that kind of thing. So there's quite a lot that I think should be in the template, but again, not everything should go there, obviously. Anything to add to that, Dan?
Again, another discussion perhaps. There are some things you mentioned that I don't necessarily agree should be a part of the template, but you're the boss, so we'll add in what we need.
Are you talking the SQLite or the update check?
Both.
You don't think either of those should go there?
I guess I'm enough of a purist that no. But
well, then
they're useful.
Then it sounds like we should just have our own internal libraries that we can add in as necessary.
Well, they're not libraries though. It's just adding those pieces to the project because they're already they're not libraries we build. The SQLite especially is a library that already exists. We're just adding it in and getting it set up. And we have had issues with that, like we said. So having it be a part of the template makes sense. But I know the last two mobile apps that I've worked on have not used SQLite, and only one of them has needed or wanted the app check. So that's why I'm not sure I want it in the template, because removing it can be more painful than adding it.
Well, I wondered then maybe we have a couple of templates that we maintain, kind of a minimalist one and a kind of a more further down the road one. I don't know.
Here.
It wouldn't be hard to just have branches inside this repo. So we have like a SQLite branch, we have a whatever branch that has other pieces that we need. If we have things that we want to say are mainstays of our application, we can do that. And then they can just, if I make changes to the base one, that's the most simplistic one, I just merge those in. So
Well, that's an interesting idea. So we can put like each of the, like this is SQLite and this is the app check and this is, I'll just add another thing, the Xamarin Essentials thing. And if I need a template with just 2 of the 3, I could just merge them into a branch and then take that and go. If I want all 3, I can just merge all 3, or that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds like a very good way to handle it.
Sounds like it'll work.
So yeah, there are ways we can handle that. So Nate, you and I can discuss, and if anybody else has ideas, feel free to share.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thanks, Dan. I really appreciate your time and putting this together.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. So who wants to do this next week?
Wait, Nate, I'm gonna take off if that's all right.
Yep.
Do we have any particular domain that that everybody'd like to hear?
That is a valid question. The stuff that I wanted people to kind of get familiar with, I've kind of covered already mostly. It seems like I need to maybe do another refresher on identity server. We're going to be doing more and more of that. And there's more and more questions about it and more people getting stuck on it. And Dan and I have been talking, and we think we maybe are going to set up an identity server for dev. So you don't even have to worry about setting it up for your app. Just point to it and go. And then we had some other ideas for how to do it in production and things like that. But we're going to try and simplify some of that. So when we get some of that done, maybe we'll represent on that. I'm going to be doing .NET 5 for Nunug tomorrow. So if you guys want to tune in for that, I think that'd be cool. If no one here shows, I might do it for Lunch and Learn next week. But I'm trying to get people to support the users group. Are there any other topics that you guys think would be helpful to see? We covered Blazor and WebAssembly, and I do think actually this next project we're doing is going to be a Blazor WebAssembly project. So
Cool.
Staying true to that.
That'll
Anyway.
be awesome. Get into it.
So yeah, I mean, the topics that I really want you guys to know about, I'm trying to cover. I never have finished my domain-driven design series. I'm on part 4 or 5. I can't remember which, but it feels like I'd have to start over at this point. So maybe I'll finish it and then start over, and we'll do it. But I don't know. And maybe it's time for a review Jeopardy. But if there's topic ideas, let me know. If anyone wants to present, let me know. I really appreciated Fredo's testing one. That was really cool. So, all right. Well, I guess I'll see you guys hopefully next week.
Okay.
All right. See you.
Yeah, see you later.